Hey everybody. So I purchased a vintage console lot on eBay. Now this was advertised as 11 vintage consoles, 20 plus controllers, over 45 games, with no guarantee that any of them were working. In fact, the only condition described was that some of them would power on, but there was no mention about which consoles in the listing those were. So I took a bit of a chance on it as a way to start my retro console collection, and let's take a look at what we got. This lot arrived in 6 boxes over the course of a week, and here we are opening box number 1. So looking at the top here, it looks like a bunch of Xbox 360 controllers, this random controller that says Rokenbach on the back. I have no idea what it is, looks like junk. The Xbox 360 actually was not part of this listing, but there is a bunch of Xbox 360 accessories and games. Peeking in this box, it looks like all the games are in here. So interestingly enough, there are a bunch of Atari 2600 and Commodore 64 cartridges in here, but neither system is actually part of this listing. There's the first of the Sega Genesis cartridges back there. It looks like whoever owned this console lot previously was a bit of a sports fan. There's a bunch of sports games for a number of systems in here. Few NES games in here, a couple of Bart Simpson titles. In fact, Bart Simpson versus the Space Mutants, that was probably one of the first 2 or 3 games that I owned on a Sega Master System way back in the day, so I'm kind of excited to see how the NES version compares. Few more Sega Genesis games. This is the only N64 title in this slot, and unfortunately the Nintendo 64 is not included in this listing either. And this is the only Super Nintendo game that came with the lot. So now we're looking at some of the newer games that came with the lot. Probably not too interested in the Xbox 360 games or the Wii games. As far as the original Xbox is concerned, I never owned one when it came out, so I'm definitely excited to see if that console is working and I can play some of these games. For whatever reason, a random DVD movie included in here as well. One what appears to be knockoff PlayStation 2 game and a random Tiger Woods PC game. Alright, looking at the first of the consoles, Nintendo Wii, pretty beat up. Came with a 2GB micro SD card. Up next, we have the Wii U. This thing's pretty scuffed up. Didn't come with any memory cards. No cracks. Looks kind of okay, but definitely a well-used console. Looking at the next batch of games, definitely excited about the original Xbox games in here, probably less so for some of the newer systems. In any case, I didn't own most of these games growing up, so it'll be fun to mess with these around the holidays and give them a play. Alright, well, it's been kind of staring at me this entire unboxing, but there it is, the original Xbox. Not too bad in terms of cosmetic condition, definitely dirty, the vents look gross. I don't know if you guys can pick that up on the video, but there is most certainly a rattling noise when I turn it around, so not sure if that's shipping damage or if it has any other issues. I guess we'll have to find out later, but nonetheless excited to have this. Look forward to trying it out, see if it works. Box number 2. That first box was the biggest one. The rest of these are a little bit smaller. So let's see what we have in here. So to start things off, we have the Sega Dreamcast. And this console is actually in pretty good shape. I'm really happy with the condition. The listing photos were so grainy. Really couldn't tell what the cosmetic condition of any of these consoles was like. Here are a few of the controllers. There's the Sega Genesis controller. Looks disgusting, but I love a good restoration challenge, and I'm sure I can make it look brand new. Aftermarket GameCube and NES controllers. A little bit disappointed that I didn't get a pair of genuine NES controllers. I think what I thought was a genuine NES controller was just this aftermarket kind of USB retro style controller. Here's the Dreamcast controller. It does not include the VMU, but looks in good shape otherwise. And randomly, a joystick for the Tandy computer. Not sure what I'm going to do with that, but it came with a lot. I'll take it. Traveling back in time here, Super Nintendo, really excited to have this. I never owned one when they came out. A neighbor of mine had one and we played it endlessly. This guy is really yellow, but in really good condition otherwise. So maybe I'll retrobrite that as part of the restoration later when I test it out, but really, really happy to have this. Alright, box number 3. What do we have here? Bunch of jumbled up wires, controllers, sensor bar, nunchuck, a really crappy Rock Band USB microphone that I'm using to record this video. Yeah, it took me about 15 minutes to unravel all these wires. They were really tangled up together. And here's an original NES power supply. Glad I don't have to shop around for that. The original NES takes AC rather than DC, so glad that's included. Few more controllers. There's the PS3 DualShock 6-axis controller. I never owned a PS3 in college. I was more of an Xbox 360 guy, so look forward to messing with that. PlayStation 2 iToy camera. And this TV poker thing. I have no idea what this is or what it's for, but it came with the lot. So I'll look into that later. Alright, what do we have hiding down here? Sega Genesis, the Model 1. So I was originally shopping for a Sega Genesis when my plans expanded and I ended up buying this vintage console lot. This is one of the main reasons that I made this purchase. Really excited to see if this guy works. There's another Sega Genesis in here. We'll take a look at that in a minute. But excited to get one of these working and play some of my childhood games. I lost count. What are we on? This is box 4. And let's see what we have in here. Alright, random cable, Xbox 360 component cable. Not sure I'm going to be able to put that to any use. Another Wii power supply, a GameCube power supply, and the second Sega Genesis included in the slot. So this is a Model 2 rather than a Model 1. This is the one that's a little bit more nostalgic for me. I like the look of the Model 1, but this is the one that I owned growing up. So hope to get one of these guys working nonetheless. PS1. I never owned one of these. I would have hoped that I got the kind of original PlayStation, but came with the PS1, not going to complain. Another reason I got this lot, the original NES, and this unit's in surprisingly good shape. Only some minor surface scuffs, hasn't even yellowed all that much. I don't know if it's going to need a retrobrite, but I'm really excited to see this in such good shape. I hope I can get this working and play some NES games on it. Box number 5. This is the smallest one of the shipment. I have a feeling I know what's in here just because of the way it's domed. So let's take a look. Okay, so we have an AV cable, a Super Nintendo gamepad, and the PS3. Like I said, I never owned a PS3, so really excited to have this. It's in really scuffed up shape. A lot of surface scratches, dust and cobwebs in all the ports. This guy's going to be a restoration candidate for sure. We're on the home stretch. Box number 6. Alright, let's take a look at what we have in here. Okay, let's move quickly through this footage. More cables, more power adapters. I think you guys have seen enough of those. This is a Nintendo GameCube Wavebird controller. It's a wireless controller for the GameCube. I really hope the receiver is included with that. That's a pretty cool controller to have for the GameCube. And the Nintendo GameCube. This guy is in probably the worst condition out of all the consoles that I've unboxed so far. Someone's definitely spilled some Coke or coffee on this thing. It's sticky. Those lids don't really come back down. I opened the lid there. It doesn't click back shut. I'm going to have to clean that up later. Few more odds and ends. Perhaps the most interesting thing in here is that red joystick in there. I'm not sure where on YouTube I saw a video on that recently. It might have been on Retro Recipes. I think that's a C64 controller. Correct me if I'm wrong, not 100% sure. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, a vintage joystick. I arranged everything so I could get a good first look at the completeness of each of the systems that I have here. Starting from left to right, I have the Dreamcast console and gamepad, but no power adapter, AV cables, or any games for the Dreamcast. As for the Xbox, I have the console and games, but no power cable, AV cable, or gamepad. The Super Nintendo up there is complete with one gamepad and one game. The Nintendo right underneath it is also complete, just has two aftermarket controllers, but also has 5 games. No cables or games at all with the Wii U, just the console and the gamepad. The GameCube's complete as far as the console goes, but I don't have any games for it, and that wireless Wavebird controller did not come with the receiver, unfortunately. The Nintendo Wii is also complete with 5 games, 5 remotes, and 1 nunchuck. The PS3 is missing the power cable, comes with 4 games and a gamepad. The PS1 is missing the power supply, and I don't have any games for it. I got 5 games for the Sega Genesis, but both of those consoles are missing their power adapters and their AV cables, and unfortunately they take different power adapters and different AV cables, so I'm going to have to get those. And in the far corner there, games for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 2, and cartridges for the Atari 2600 and the Commodore 64. But none of those 4 systems were actually part of this game lot. So that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you if you've made it this far. If there's a particular system that stood out to you in this video and you'd like to see me restore that system first, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. You know, retro gaming's made quite the splash with all these like modern versions of retro consoles, but I think for anyone that grew up in the 80s like myself, there's something very nostalgic about starting a collection like this. And I think part of the appeal of this bundle for me was that there was no guarantee that it was fully operational, that these consoles were going to be working. So I knew that there was going to be a challenge of fixing and restoring some of these to get them looking and working like new. Something tells me that I'm going to start working on the 8 and 16-bit generation because I'm the most excited to get those working, but let's see where this adventure takes me.